1 yard away, basically, from tying the game with about 4 minutes left, is sticking in the craw of certain Texas players, the ones at least that have not moved on to the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, this was a hell of a game in the college football playoff semifinals a year ago. And, I have to think that the stars on the Texas team, who are primarily on defense, actually, Anthony Hill Jr., Colin Simmons, Michael Taft, that these guys are just chomping at the opportunity to come up to Columbus and try to even the count, if you will, because first and goal from the 1. I mean, that's all you have to say. And Steve Sarkisian. I mean, that I wrote a story this week at Horns 24/7 talking about how goal to go has haunted Texas really the last 3 years. In 2022, they're playing TCU. Had first and goal from the 2, first and goal from the 5. Only came away with 3 points in a 17-10 loss. Had first and goal from the 1 against OU in 2023. Didn't get in. Lost 34-30. Had first and goal from the 1 against Ohio State. Down 7 with a chance to tie or take the lead, and goes. They go straight backwards. Jack Sawyer, just puts an exclamation point on the nightmare. And so, Steve Sarkisian, he's got to develop an identity down there in those situations. And that's got to be a culture play for Texas, especially with, Arch Manning now. He's a better athlete than Quinn Ewers. How do you, take advantage of that? And they should have all their running backs healthy and ready to go after losing C.J. Baxter and Christian Clark to preseason injuries last year. So, this should be a lot of fun.
Well, that's kind of. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I liken Sarkisian to kind of where Ryan Day was. Before he won his national championship, people are waiting and thinking, is he really the right guy for this job? I guess the one good thing you can say for Sarkisian is that he did beat Texas A&M and he beat Oklahoma last year. Couldn't the Georgia thing in the championship game was a bit of a problem for them, obviously. But they're right there toe to toe with Ohio State. I think that anybody who thinks this is going to be a walkover for Ohio State just because they're playing at home, I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. So. I think a lot of people in these parts eager to get to that day in late August and, be here before we know it. I know that.
Yeah, I think, Steve Sarkisian, they used to call him 7-win Steve. And then in 23, when he went to Alabama and won, Quinn Ewers, outstanding in that game, the defense. And they won 34-24. First time Saban had lost at home by double digits. And then, going to Michigan last year, I know people are like, oh, Michigan, they're no good. But that defense was legit from Michigan last year. And Quinn Ewers, chopped them up. Great game plan. They stayed away from the big defensive tackles in the middle, worked the outside, used their speed on the outside. And got it done in Ann Arbor, and they've got the longest winning streak in true road games at 11, and that will get tested to the max there in the Horseshoe. So, there's so many layers to this game, because you look at what the Texas defense did to Jeremiah Smith last year. Every time he was in the slot, they put Andrew Makuba over the top of him, and Will Howard very correctly stayed away from Andrew Makuba, who is going to be a monster in the NFL. Was a monster last year, had 5 interceptions, and Jeremiah Smith had 1 catch for 3 yards against Texas. Now Howard peppered it to Carnell Tate and worked his way down the field and made some big plays with his legs late. But Makuba's gone. So does Texas have the personnel to pull off that kind of defensive game plan again? We'll see.
I will remind people, Texas has never lost in Columbus, so they are 1-0 all time in Ohio Stadium. So don't think it's going to be simple.
I was 15.
I was there the last time then.
15 feet away. I was down there watching Texas drive into that north end zone. I was 15 feet away when Lima Swede caught that pass in the corner of the end zone, landed squarely on his back. And I said to anybody who was standing there, I go, that is a Texas touchdown. And nobody wanted to believe it because it was just stunning. And he was just close to the out of bounds marker, but not out of bounds. So that was one hell of a play that Vince Young and Lima Swede pulled off, no doubt.
Well, Texas got some help from Jim Tressel in that game because I remember saying the week before, I think Justin Zwick was like 23 of 25 in the opener. And I said, this may be the best thing that ever happened to Texas because Tressel may start Zwick instead of Troy Smith. And sure enough, he did. And then I think he went to Troy Smith and then he went back to Zwick. And every time Smith was in the game, he was making plays, moving the ball, scoring, even if it was just a field goal. But yeah that was
I think it was 10-0 before Troy Smith got in the game.
That's right.
Ohio State was down. And another one of the plays that I will remember.
Ryan Hamby.
Yeah, Ryan Hamby dropping the ball in the end zone, certainly. All the field goals, I think they were 5 of 6 on field goals. It may have been Josh Houston was kicking. And they missed the one that, would have helped them toward the end. Not that it mattered, but the play that I'll remember is Anthony Schlegel from Texas by way of what was he?
Air Force.
Air Force, yeah. Comes on a direct blitz and he bounces off of Vince Young, does not tackle him, and Vince Young throws the ball down the middle of the field for 50 yards. And I think Malcolm Jenkins had to drag the guy down at the 2-yard line or something. That was one of the craziest plays I can remember that, here's Schlegel, big, tough guy, 230, 240 pounds, and he just bounced straight off of Vince Young like he was, one of those rubber balls that just, goes off of a brick wall. So, and not only that,
Vince Young was tougher than a wild boar because Schlegel was insane enough that he would go wild boar hunting just with a Bowie knife.
That was a crazy day, and I recapped it on the news afterward, and I'm like, you give up all these yards and all these points, and you can't do that obviously defensively, but the game's changed so much in 20 years. What we saw that night won't resemble much of what we see in college football and in that game that's coming up in whatever it is, 7 weeks. So.
I've got a defensive question because, Sark is an offensive genius. I'm sure we can get to the offensive side of the ball. But, Chip, in your opinion, who has to have the better game for Texas to win, Colin Simmons or Anthony Hill Jr.?
Well, I think both of them do. I mean, if Texas is – they missed in recruiting at the defensive tackle position, had to bring in 5 transfer defensive tackles this offseason. Including Cole Brevard from the Big Ten, from Purdue. And
Hero Canoe from Ohio State.
Yeah, Hero Canoe from Ohio State. Levon Johnson from Maryland. Murad Watson from Syracuse was the big one they got in the spring. Probably got a chance to be a starter. But if they can stop the run, I think Texas has the best edge room in the country. They've got Jack Sawyer now. They've got the guys who can really get home. Ethan Burke, Trey Moore is still there. And then Anthony Hill in the middle is just a wrecking machine. So, and he loves the big games. Like the bigger the game, the better he plays. So those two guys both have to be at top speed. They have to be seeing it really clearly because I I think this Texas defense has a chance to be special. I know they lost Jahdae Barron. They lost Andrew Makuba. Obviously, they lost their they lost their 4 primary interior defensive linemen and Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton, Jermaine Lole, and Bill Norton. So that defensive tackle spot is a question mark for sure. But if they can stop the run the way that they have the last 2 seasons, 3 seasons really, then I think Texas is going to be able to get pressure on the quarterback. And, Colin Simmons, he's got as good a ball get off as I've seen around here in, 10, 12 years. So, and super confident kid. So we'll see if that, comes to bear. But if Ohio State can run the ball, it negates a lot of what Colin Simmons brings.
I mean, Ohio State only ran the ball for 81 yards last year, so I don't see them running for much more than that this year, which is going to, I think, make this certainly a close game. My question is, you talk about the culture plays of the red zone and things like that. Don't you expect all of that to be better now with the healthy backfield and Arch? You kind of alluded to it being able to run, because I know in the past Ohio State would be like, when they had a passing only quarterback, they'd try to tinker with like a run threat quarterback for down in the red zone. But with a guy like Arch or Will Howard, you don't need that. You can just go ahead and run your offense, and he can keep things alive, and he can do some different things for you. So don't you expect those goal line situations to be better this year just from the personnel being who they are? And I don't know what the offensive line looks like. I think you guys in Texas lost like 4 of their starters, so that has to be rebuilt. But aren't you expecting a more forceful offense from Texas this year on the ground?
Well, I think there were some who wanted to see more of Arch in the red zone last year, like in the SEC title game. It was kind of too little too late when Arch finally got in. And, he's a bigger, more athletic guy. He's working more under center. And I think that gives them a chance to, do some things with the cadence and get the quarterback in, if you need to pick up a yard or some form of the tush push. But yeah, I do. I think they should be better in the short yardage and goal to go situations with Arch, simply because, you hope he's healthy, because Quinn, that's what got him. That's why he was a 7th round pick. The injuries, he was tough. He played hurt, and that's admirable, but he was a different quarterback when he was healthy. You saw it against Alabama, you saw it against Michigan. And then when he was banged up, you saw it against Georgia and on and on. So if Arch Manning is healthy and, he brings that athleticism into those goal line situations, now you make the defense account for the quarterback, and it's a little bit more of a fair fight.
How do you expect the running back situation to shake out now?
I think everyone's waiting to see what CJ Baxter looks like, because as a freshman, he was good. He wasn't special. He ran in a gap scheme in high school, and he was still adjusting to the zone runs of Steve Sarkisian's offense, which are the bread and butter runs for Texas. And so how did he improve while watching last year? Because Quintravian Wisner is not, he's a grinder. He's not, he's not going to make you miss in a phone booth or, spin moves like Bijan Robinson. He's just going to grind out, 4 yards. And, but that was effective. He ran it 33 times against Texas A&M, and I think ran right into the hearts of Texas fans. But if CJ Baxter is a lot better than what he was 2 years ago, that's the guy that everyone's waiting for. Big, strong, fast, can run through you, can run around you. And so we'll have to see. We'll have to see where he is from a confidence standpoint, because Christian Clark is the guy that Tashard Choice told me runs more like Bijan Robinson, jump steps, spin moves, elusive. And we've never seen Christian Clark in a game because he snapped his Achilles in fall camp last year. So there's a lot of intrigue as it pertains to the Texas running game. There's a guy, James Simon, who's the least heralded running back in the recruiting class, who I've been told is Jarek Gibson with better hands. And Jarek Gibson is their downhill guy. He's the guy they put in the short yardage situations, the pounder between the tackles. I don't know if they'll get to him or not, but he got a lot of reps in the spring and is kind of my dark horse guy to emerge in fall camp because Sarkisian values the running back's ability to catch the football so much. Quintravian Wisner had 44 catches last year. I think even Texas fans forget that. So I think there's talent there. They've got to figure out the roles.
Looking at receiver, that seems to be the question that I have looking at the offense. Obviously, Ryan Wingo had a couple of touchdowns. DeAndre Moore had 7 touchdowns. Khalil Lockett is figured to be very much in the mix as a true freshman. I mean, with losing guys like Matthew Golden, I mean, what is the prognosis of the receiver room? I mean, Ohio State, and I've said this in pieces I've already written about looking at the game. It's probably best for both teams that they're getting each other week 1 and not week 8 when some of these positions have maybe filled in a little bit more. But, what is your overview of receiver, especially breaking in a semi-new quarterback in Arch?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a mystery, but obviously DeAndre Moore is the leader of the room. He's the vocal leader. He's the guy who is at practice first, holds guys accountable. And I think people are looking at him and saying, well, he could be this year's Matthew Golden. Others are, waiting for Ryan Wingo to break out because he was in the same conversation with Jeremiah Smith and, Ryan Williams coming out of that recruiting class. And Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams were the only guys getting talked about last year. Ryan Wingo had some nice plays, some big plays, but had some drops in some key games late in critical situations. So he's got to take it up a notch. The guy who really intrigues me is the Stanford transfer, Emmett Mosley V, because he's a guy Texas really liked out of high school, but then he tore up his knee. He ended up going to Stanford and had 4 touchdown catches. I think 2 of them were on 4th down. Like, he was a go-to guy for them in as big a situations as Stanford could have last year. His parents are both Notre Dame athletes. His mom won the Heisman for soccer. So he's a guy, and I'm hearing that he's really kind of adapted quickly to their summer workouts and his fit in. So I think you've got those 3 guys who've played in games. And then it does sound like Khalil Lockett is starting to emerge of the freshman receivers that they brought in terms of summer workouts. So, Lockett's a burner. He's in that mold of Sarkisian receivers who are 6 feet and can fly and stretch, the defense, take the top off the defense. So, and I do think Arch Manning is a better deep ball passer than Quinn Ewers. So I think that excites Steve Sarkisian because we know Sarkisian likes to, take some shots downfield. And that was a bit of a struggle for Quinn all through his career, although he hit him against Alabama in 23. So we'll see what Arch Manning's got in that department. I have one word for Texas, coming back from its losing its way as a college athletics superpower, and that is alignment. Texas did not have alignment at the end of the Mac Brown era. You had, big money boosters with ties to the regents trying to interview Nick Saban. They wanted Mac gone. That all went to hell. And then they hired Steve Patterson as athletic director to fire Mac Brown, and he didn't do it. And then they forced him to fire him, and it led to just chaos. Tom Herman, Charlie Strong, then Tom Herman. Chris Del Conte, the athletic director, deserves a ton of credit. He came in and got the whole athletic department, marching in the same direction. He, the president, then Jay Hartzell, Regents Chair Kevin Eltife, they took the gamble on Steve Sarkisian. A lot of people were surprised when that hire happened. But Sarkisian had a very detailed plan that he's still executing. And, they wanted him to match wits with Lincoln Riley because OU was winning the Big 12. And Sarkisian came in and said, I'm going to build this thing like an SEC team, big in the trenches, fast on the outside, because those are the guys winning the national championships. And that's what he's done. And his offensive pedigree has attracted quarterbacks and receivers and skill talent. And so he hasn't made many missteps other than the 1st and goal call, against Ohio State when the big stuff is on the line. So I think Texas fans feel great. I tell them, enjoy it while you've got it, because you've got alignment right now. You've got a great athletic director. You've got your facilities have been upgraded. You've got, good coaching across the board in all your other sports. So enjoy it because, Chris Del Conte, Joe Castiglione just announced his retirement at 67 at OU. I don't know how long Chris Del Conte is going to go, but right now things are good at Texas. And 10 years ago, I would have told you this is a terrible place to be. This is not a good job because there was no alignment. So it's changed considerably.
Hey, Chip, as we close things out, and we appreciate your time, getting back real quick to the matchup, I just had one final question. And you had mentioned in your NIL spiel about offensive line recruits and how 3-stars have come through. And obviously this program for about 10 years plus was a wasteland when it came to recruiting 5-stars along the offensive front, but not developing them. And the NFL draft was void of Texas offensive line talent. Kelvin Banks is gone. I know Brandon Baker's a big guy that has probably is the highest ceiling on the offensive line. Between this group coming back and maybe any other position group, what needs to be sorted out the most for this Texas team in August to be prepared for this first matchup?
Yeah, I think the offensive line is pretty well set. I think you've got Trevor Gooseby at left tackle, Neto Umazulu, who's a 4-year guy in the program, has waited patiently for his turn at left guard. Cole Hudson, another 4-year guy who started every game as a freshman at right guard, will be at center. DJ Campbell is the 5-star, the lone returning starter. And then, you mentioned Brandon Baker, probably going to be the right tackle. I think the chemistry, the cohesion between those offensive linemen, Ohio State's going to present stuff with Matt Patricia that they have no idea what to expect. They can look at Patricia's NFL tape, but they have no idea. So that's a lot for a group of 5 who, are just learning to communicate when all hell breaks loose, for them to handle. And Arch Manning's got to help, keep that under control or at least react to it. And so I think that's a big, on the priority list, that's probably number 1. You can say the chemistry and cohesion between Arch and these receivers, his new tight end, Jack Endries, the Cal transfer. And that, this game is a battle of the 2 top tight end transfers, and Max Clare and Jack Endries, which is another layer to the story. And then defensively, there was special communication in the secondary between Jahdae Barron, Michael Taff, and Andrew Makuba. And it dated back to the fact that the three of them are all from Austin and trained together, under a trainer in Austin while they were all going to separate high schools. And then there they were all playing together, had unbelievable connectivity. Makuba and Barron are gone. Can they get that again? And the defensive tackles, who's going to step up, be the frontline guy, who's going to be in the rotation, because again, I think the edge pressure and the linebacker play and having Michael Taft back there as the quarterback will give this defense a chance to be special and maybe a championship type defense. So I think their specialists are better. They went and got Jack Bomeister from Utah as a punter, and then they brought in Mason Shipley from Texas State, the kicker, who had a perfect year 2 years ago. And so I think they feel good about their specialists and the return game. So, those are big question marks up front, the cohesion, the chemistry of the offensive line. And then if those interior defensive linemen can stop the run.